Okay, good evening, members. You're all very welcome to our first council meeting of the new year in Omagh in the Grange. First of all, just to say that a happy new year to everybody, and hopefully 24 is all that you want, and as the old saying, that you get all that you need and some of what you want. So that being said, I hope it's a good year for everybody. Can I just remind, it's not going back to the old days, but can I remind people just to try and speak into the mic so that we're very clear when we're speaking, just more for the convenience of everybody in the chamber, but also those online, and then the minute taken later on and all of the rest of that. It makes life just that little bit easier for those of us that has a little advanced years and struggling to hear. And I'm not looking at anybody at all. That being said, I see we have our full complement nearly, I think. So with that, I'll go to party leaders, starting with John. Any apologies?
Thank you, Chair. Apologies for Councillors Stephen McCann, Anne-Marie Fitzgerald, Roisin Devine Gala, and Patrick Withers.
Thank you. And Paul, or is it Paul?
Thanks, Chair. Happy New Year to you all. Councillor Malcolm, it's the only one I have. Councillor Edgerton is way down.
Okay, thanks, Paul. And is there any other apologies? Oh, everybody else is here. Very good. Okay, we're going to move to our first order of business, and that is to confirm and sign the minutes of the special council meeting held on the 27th of November. So for accuracy, page 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8. And Earl and Paul, thank you. And then for matters arising, oh, just there, set it, yeah. And our next set is the full council meeting, and that was on Tuesday, the 5th of December. So we'll take those for accuracy. Page 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, and 14. Proposer and seconder, Diana and Marty, thank you. Now, have we any declarations of interest? Okay, none showing. Thank you. So we'll take from the special council meeting matters arising on page 1, page 2, and 3. Okay, page 4, page 5, all right.
Thank you, Chair. Can I hear you? On page 5, the bottom 6 bullet points, I'm referring to the 3rd bullet point. It says there, update regarding traffic measures which could be put in place between Kevlin Road and Dromore Road in order to alleviate traffic congestion. You know, and that's close to the point that I was making. The real point that should be recorded here, and we await reference in Daniel Healy's correspondence, is that a through road through Coolnagyard has been promised for a significant amount of time. Residents who took up ownership or rent of homes in Coolnagyard village, which is 300 or 400 houses, maybe 400 houses, they've only one way in and one way out, and it's from the Kevlin Road. Whereas if you drive into Coolnagyard settlement, you can see unbelievably closely the Dromore Road, and residents want to know when will the completion of that road take place, because it's been like that probably for decades now, a few hundred meters, and you have a whole new scenario for the people of Coolnagyard and the people of Omagh. It's the ability to access the Dromore Road from Coolnagyard, and it looks perilously close. It looks unbelievably close that that's about to be realised, but it has been in that condition. What are the barriers to completion of that road? And I don't think Daniel Healy has addressed that in the return correspondence, and he did promise to do that. Thank you, Chair.
Yeah, thanks, Barry. Did you want to? Mark?
Thank you, Chair, and Happy New Year to you as well. It's a point on page 5 as well, and it's in relation to a query I had at the previous special meeting of the council in relation to the public realms works in Enniskillen. At that meeting, I'd asked for information on the number of car parking spaces that have been lost as a result of the public realms work, really along the main streets in Enniskillen. So by that I mean about one end of Belmore Street up to the other end of Darling Street. So the number of car parking spaces that existed before the public realms work and are currently available now. Now, reading these minutes and actually listening back to that meeting, that response wasn't issued or that query wasn't answered. Now, I note the Chief Executive did provide an update on the number of additional accessible spaces, and that's very welcome. But it would be useful if we could get, Chair, an update on the number of ordinary car parking spaces that have been lost along the main street. And if the figures aren't available now, just if they could be provided to members, that would be useful, because as I said at the time, it was a concern and it was a frustration, and I heard it raised again over the Christmas period. So figures would be useful now.
Okay. And Aaron?
Thank you very much, Chair. Well, I want to support Councillor McAduff's comments with regard to Coolnagyard to the Dromore Road. Those of us who are town councillors for Omagh have been lobbied on this matter for a number of years, and Daniel Healy hasn't answered that query that we had on the evening. But I would support Councillor McAduff in his comments with regard to where we are with this, and can we see some movement very, very shortly on it. Just want to put it out there. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, so we can go back and look for the information there on those specific queries. Okay, anything else? 6.
So, Chair, just on page 6, we've a couple of items, but maybe the first one, just to formally note correspondence then from the Divisional Roads Manager dated the 8th of December, and that's following up. I know a couple of members have referenced it on a few of the queries that were mentioned, so really just for noting, please.
Seamus?
Yeah, thank you, Chair, for letting me in. In relation to the provision of street lighting, I'm really confused on this one, because I brought it up because there was new street lighting had been provided in some village or town, and I'm not sure where it was at the time, but it was quite a surprise to me, because every time that I had requested new street lighting in a Pacific Road in Brewper Village, I was told that it met the criteria, but that there was a moratorium on street lighting, and unless a minister overturned that road service, were not able to put in. Now, I have never heard tell of that being overturned, so I'm confused of whether that was ever the case, and that I was being just put off from asking for this by this excuse, which I would find very disturbing if that is the case. Or a minister did overturn this and we were never let know. I'm very sceptical whether there was ever this moratorium on street lighting. So I'm just, I'm really confused in that, and maybe it might be a good to write back and ask when was that overturned? When did a minister overturn that moratorium? Because or was it ever there in the first place? Just for clarification, and just on a general note on road service, I have heard that the staff in road service at the minute is at an all-time low. I believe in 5 Mile Town, when the Bruipera yard closed, there was 20. They were moved to 5 Mile Town. There was 20 staff, which was taken in from an area that were doing them in Enniskillen, and those 20 staff, I believe, is now down to 6 staff members. They're out advertising for staff, and they can't get any staff. But when they do get staff, every depot in the Western Division is understaffed. But now, whether this is right or not, I don't know. But when somebody is appointed, we'll say somebody applies from Strabane, for example, they could be put into Enniskillen. So the drive from Strabane to Enniskillen, instead of being put into the Strabane one, or somebody from Enniskillen could be put to Castlederg instead of in their own depot where they're also needing staff. I think the management of this and how staff has been treated, I believe, is disgraceful, and I can see why they're really struggling to get staff at the minute. And if we're down from 20 staff down to 6 in 5 Mile Town, I think it's shocking. And maybe could we also write to them just to clarify that, and to clarify, is it the case that if somebody applies from Strabane, they could be located in Enniskillen, and is there anything that they can, or 5 Mile Town or wherever, is there anything can be done about that? Because they're not going to keep staff if they're treating them like that. So that's my proposal.
Okay, and that could be incorporated in the previous letter that we will write. Okay, Josephine?
Yes, thank you, Chair, and can I too wish you every good wish for the new year, and hopefully 2024 will be good for all of us. It's just in relation to the criteria used by the department to establish the major works prioritization list, and with particular emphasis on the exclusion of the A32 Cornamuck Road.
Josephine, we're just not there yet. That's coming up later.
Okay.
Okay. Eddie?
Thanks, Chair. Just to kind of tag on an extra question onto that letter, if possible. They didn't really answer the question that I had put forward at the time regarding the A32 as to whether or not they had actually in their algorithm of what projects were prioritised and what weren't, whether the health factor of the A32 they didn't specifically.
There's a separate letter on that, Eddie. They address that later in the agenda.
Thank you.
Anthony?
Yeah, thanks, Chair. Just on second Seamus's proposal there.
That's great. Okay, we're moving on. Anything else on?
Sorry, Chair, just further down then on page 6, 2 letters from the Police Service of Northern Ireland. The first letter, the 15th of December, is really just an acknowledgement, and then the welcoming the Council's congratulations for the Chief Constable and support for the wider PSNI team. And the second letter then is the substantive response in relation to the concerns expressed regarding the closure of the custody suite of Enniskillen, the refurbishment and the reopening. So the letter states that that decision was taken and it has been closed for a period of over 5 years and is not will not be revisited. And the Omagh custody suite is currently closed for planned maintenance and is a designated custody suite and will reopen when those works are complete.
Okay, Mark?
Thank you, Chair, and I'm happy to note the correspondence if needed. I suppose, Chair, I mean, the response, it's disappointing, but it's not particularly surprising, really. I mean, we probably all would have expected the PSNI to come back with this line. But, Chair, I don't think it's reasonable at this stage, particularly in the context of what has happened with Omagh now in recent months. I think the circumstances are very different now to whenever the custody suite in Enniskillen first closed a number of years previously. So, Chair, I would make the proposal tonight that we write back to the PSNI and we ask them to demonstrate how, or to ask them to give us their assessment of as to why or how police officers, whenever they have to bring now, when they arrest somebody and they bring them into custody, how 2 hours there, maybe close to 2 hours back, a journey of 4 hours isn't having a negative time or negative impact on PSNI response times across this district. So, because I mean, I've spoken to people both within and outside of the PSNI, and there is a recognition now that, you know, this is a very big area, geographic area, big corner for Northern Ireland. And whenever Strabane is full, the next one up is Londonderry. Whenever Londonderry is full, you have Coleraine and, or not Coleraine, I think maybe Limavady even, or Antrim even. I mean, it just seems that the decision's been taken to close it. And again, once again, just people from Anaroma are at the losing end. And Chair, if I could ask or suggest that we make one or seek one piece of clarification within that letter too. I've been told, and I'm not entirely, I may be right or may well be wrong, but I've been told now because the custody suite in Enniskillen is closed and because the custody suite in Omagh is closed for refurbishment at the moment, if someone is detected at the side of the road for and comes back with a positive reading for drink driving, that they have to be brought to the nearest custody suite. So there's a concern that now with Enniskillen closed, Omagh closed, that you either go to Strabane or, as I say, if Strabane's full, you go up to Londonderry. There's a big concern about those people who are detected, particularly this time of year, whenever the PSNI rightly have a strong focus on this, the people who are being detected at the side of the road, suspected of drink driving, now are spending significant amount of times in police vehicles being transported to stations. So it would be useful if in the same letter that we're sending to the PSNI, we could ask them to confirm whether that is or isn't the case. Thank you.
Okay, have we a seconder for that letter? John? Okay, are we all agreed, members? And John, are you willing to second the noting of the correspondence? Thank you. Okay. Anything else on 6, Alison? No? Page 7.
Thank you, Chair. Just on page 7, then a response from DFI, and this was in relation to the dredging of the Coalbrook River. And I suppose while it is a designated watercourse, the sections that the council had requested be dredged are not, and therefore this work would be outside of the DFI's responsibility.
Yeah, thank you. And Paul?
Thank you, Chair. It's very disappointing that this river can't be looked at. So then who owns this part of the river then? Can we write back to Permanent Secretary and ask them who owns this section of the river? Is it Waterways Ireland that owns the mouth of the river, or who owns it? Because it's going out into the lake.
Okay. First of all, have you a seconder for that? Earl, thank you. Are we all agreed, members? Establish the ownership of the river there and who has the responsibility of it. And will you note the correspondence as well, Paul?
Yes.
And Earl, you're happy to second the noting? Okay, thank you. Anything else on 7? No? Okay. And nothing on page 8. Okay. We're moving on. Council meeting then 5th of December. Yep. So we're on the council meeting of the 5th of December. Matters arising this time, page 1. Page 1 only.
Sorry, page 2.
2. You are there.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Just to note that we've had a response from the Department of Health about whether or not they did a rural assessment, impact assessment. They've sort of answered the question, by saying that the periods of consultation and notice and equality screening and impact were deemed not required, as these services were being maintained with reduced activity to reflect the funding available. I'd like to ask them how they arrived to that conclusion, that a 50% cut in services was deemed not enough to merit an assessment. It goes on to say the cuts have been applied across the primary care elective service in the north, if that sort of makes it okay. That actually was my point in the first place. That 50% cut here, specifically for the women's service based in Lisnaskea, obviously would have a more profound negative impact than it would in a larger area and with more services, say Belfast, for example, which is why a rural impact and equality assessment needed to be done, in my opinion. So I thank you for finally answering the question of sorts, but I would like to know how that decision was arrived at not to do an assessment and why, please. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, thanks, Nolene. And Nolene, you happy? Yeah, Josephine?
Yes, thank you, Chair. Well, Chair, I support Councillor Hayes' comments 100%. Primary care elective services are even more important in areas like Fermanagh and Omagh, where our access to these services are very much reduced. Mr. May, in his correspondence, third paragraph down, refers to the fact that GPs can still refer to secondary care. The fact of the matter is that one of the reasons why the GP elective services were set up was really to improve patient access, because access to secondary care services, the waiting times are just so long. And this is an example, the GP elective services is an example of a service which was very good, very effective, with multiple patient benefits. And it defies logic that these successful services, which are benefiting patients, particularly in rural areas, as Councillor Hayes says, that these are the ones that have been cut. Now, Mr. May does say that the department is continuing to communicate with the Federation support units and SPPG. So let's hope that come the 1st of April that we will see this funding reinstated. But certainly I feel, as Councillor Hayes says, that we should seek further clarification from Mr. May as to why there was no differential made between services in urban areas and rural areas, where, in my view, the need is much greater. Thank you, Chair.
Josephine, are you seconding the?
I will, Chair. Thank you.
Both the writing of a letter and the noting of the correspondence. Thank you. And Eddie?
Thanks, Chair. And just to echo the previous councillors and what they've said so far, I'd like to point out the note there of periods of consultation notice and equality screening impact assessments were deemed not required as these services were being maintained with reduced activity. That's actually not the case when it comes to vasectomies, which has just been essentially completely scrapped. And vasectomies now will not be available in Northern Ireland unless you're going to go private. So that actually is inaccurate. That service has been completely removed from primary care. So I think we should ask that too. You know, if they're saying that they didn't have to do that consultation notice and equality assessment, impact assessment, because it was reduced activity, why was there no one done for vasectomy? I think that should be added to the letter too, please, Chair.
Nolene, Josephine, happy enough that that's included? Okay, thanks, Eddie. And Seamus?
Thank you, Chair. Just on the rural impact assessment, maybe the Chief Executive could clarify that for us, as in what we understand. If we were cutting something by 50%, a service that we provide, let's say we decided to cut the bin service or the refuge service by 50%, would that be something we would have to do a rural impact assessment on? or is it only if you're cutting it entirely? Because that's what he seems to be saying.
Chair, I think it's certainly, my understanding would be if there was anything which would be deemed to have an adverse impact on the community which it would serve, so in this case, say the rural community, then the rural needs impact assessment, or good practice at least, would dictate that it should be undertaken. And the example that you've given, Councillor Green, if we were undertaking such a course of action, we would undertake such an assessment. What I'm not sure about, but it's something we can certainly clarify, reference is made because of the sort of the financial pressures. If there are any caveats for government departments to avoid doing such a screening, if there are certain other circumstances which apply, and I don't know if that's the case, but we can investigate that even for next week's Policy and Resources Committee and report back.
Okay. Thank you. And Nolan, just for completeness, you're happy to propose the noting as well. Are we all agreed then in writing with those points, members? Okay, thank you. Anything else on 2? 3?
Chair, just on page 3, maybe we've quite a number of letters for this page, but just the first item, which was clarification from the Department for Infrastructure regarding signage and members about pre and nursery schools. So members would recall we had some previous correspondence which seemed to indicate the status of the group, namely if it was private or public, had a determining weight. In fact, the letter from the Permanent Secretary says that there's no provision for school signage at any nursery or preschool facility within the Department's Safety at Schools policy. But the matter is a review of the policies underway and the Council concerns have been passed to the team.
Diana?
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Alison. That letter, yes, I see that when you look at the traffic signs regulations from DFI, they date back to 1997. There is a draft road safety strategy up to 2030, which was published in October 22. So I'm hoping that this will be given further consideration. I've had letters back on the issue from DFI, and it's a matter now of a verbal brief to the actual playgroup itself, and just advising parents about road safety. Thank you, Chair. And happy to note the letter. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Have a seconder, John. Okay. Anything else on 3?
Yes, Chair. So then in relation to the next item, item 4.3, the civil service regional hubs, we've received quite a few pieces of correspondence. Well, to a greater or lesser extent, Chair, they're confirming the Department's awareness of the hubs and an understanding or a willingness to promote the availability of the Omagh hub. So responses received from the Department of Health, the Department of Agriculture, Environment and Rural Affairs, the Department of Education, and then in your other correspondence folder from the Department of Finance, and that's item 4 in the other folder, the Department of Justice, the Department for Infrastructure. So that's the full suite that we have received today, Chair.
Okay. Thank you, Alison. Barry?
Thank you, Chair. There's a lot of correspondence, as the Chief Executive has said, about the civil service regional hubs. As an Omagh councillor, I'm very interested in making sure there's maximum take-up of the facility at County Hall, which is a Connect 2 hub. There's a couple of points maybe. One would be Richard Pengelly and I think Mark Brown. They remind us of something we already know, which is they're not there for the provision of face-to-face service provision. We know that. They're used as an alternative temporary working location, and we know that. So they're stating the obvious, but at least in these series of letters, they acknowledge that where appropriate, they will proactively communicate with the non-departmental public bodies under their aegis to remind them of the facility. Because I think the figure of 39 per month was quoted previously. Would want to see that increased, and would want no complacency. So I'll leave it at that, Chair. Thank you.
And are you willing to note the correspondence?
Yes, indeed. Propose accordingly.
And have a seconder for the correspondence. Carol, thank you. Okay, members?
And then Chair, just also with that item, correspondence received from the Department of Agriculture on the 12th of December. And this is the response to the Council's Freedom of Information request in relation to the, I suppose, breakdown of staffing, but specifically then the allocation of posts at Forest Service headquarters and all posts in Inniskeen House, Enniskillen.
Seamus?
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, they've sent a kind of a table here of it's. I suppose I don't think they've sent a reference to show what any of these AA or AO or EO2 or EO1 or SO stands for. I didn't see it in the correspondence, so I don't know how clear that is. I go on over to the middle of it and it says industrial. So there's 49 industrial at Inniskeen House. But I'm going back to the first column, AA. So I would presume if you got an A plus or an AA in your exams, it'd be very good. Like, you know, so I'm presuming this AA would be the high and mighty. But I don't see any of the AAs or A plus in Inniskeen House. I see them down in Dundonald House, which was the original headquarters. So my understanding of bringing these Forest Service out to making the headquarters at Enniskeen House is that the people at the top would be there. That's where your chief executive would be, and his number two, and everything would be there. So, but there's none of them at Inniskeen House on any of the columns. So I think that kind of shows us, if I'm reading this right, and as I say, apologies if I'm reading it wrong because they didn't give a reference of what these stand for. But if I am reading it right, so the high and mighty of the Forest Service didn't come down from Belfast, didn't relocate in Enniskeen House. Am I correct in that reading?
Chair, just to say, and we can certainly seek, formal clarification. My understanding in terms of the gradings here, so if we take AA, I think that's administrative assistant. G6, grade 6 would be the highest. So if you go from the extreme left into the middle, so I'm assuming the most senior on that would be the G6 position. And then the industrial scale, I'm assuming, moves up to the agricultural inspector grade 1, as I understand, would be the highest of that category. So if you like, there's almost a midway point. So AA to G6 would be the highest point. And then, beg your pardon, G5, senior civil service, SCS G5 is the highest point. And then industrial through to agricultural inspector grade 1. Agriculture inspector grade 1 would be the highest point on that side.
And which of them would be the chief executive? Because I think it was specifically asked where the chief executive, how often he was there.
Well, Chair, we could formally request, but my understanding would be it would be the SCS G5 would be equivalent to the chief executive position.
Yes.
It's about halfway through the column. If you're looking at the chart, it's about in the middle of the page.
So
beside the first industrial.
Are they leading us to believe, because I know without any contradiction, the chief executive doesn't be about Enniskeen House. And if that SCSG5 is trying to claim that the chief executive is based in Enniskeen House, I think we definitely should query that, and we should be querying it how many days in the year is this SCSG5 based there. And no harm, but when we write a letter and we specifically asked that, now I had to get clarification there, for no idea what any of them things meant, and I don't know many of the other councillors understood what they meant. But I think that was just a kind of a smart way of giving us the two fingers, for the want of a better word.
Okay, are you willing to note the correspondence, Seamus? Okay, thank you. And Mark?
Thank you, Chair. And just sticking with the job titles for a moment, my understanding is, and I may be wrong, but the letters AA stand for Administrative Assistant, and that's a grade that the Civil Service have been trying to phase out over a number of years just because it was the lowest grade within the Civil Service. Chair, if I could propose that, I don't know if it needs to be a formal letter or not, but it would be useful to get further information from the department because there's 2 points. Firstly, the date of the first table is October 15, but I believe the transfer was June 15. So it'll be useful to see these figures, the equivalent figures. So we have the October 15 figures. It'll be useful to see the October 14 figures because my understanding is a number of those industrial posts, for instance, last year, or up to October 23, so last year, there are 91 staff based in Enniskillen. Of those, 41 were industrial. My understanding is they would have been based in Enniskillen House anyway. That they're not there because it's headquarters. They're there because Fermanagh and Omagh has a significant degree of forestry here. So it would be useful just to see how many of them are already here. And then, as I say, to get a comparative figure of the October 2014 figures, just to see how many staff transferred down.
And you're seconding the note in the correspondence? Yep. And Seamus, you're happy for them points to be added into a letter? Yeah. Are we all agreed, members? Okay. That can be undertaken. Okay. Anything else on 5?
Yes, page 5.
Page 4. There's nothing else on 4, is there? Okay, page 5.
Yes, so Chair, this is just the letter then from DFI Roads, and this is in relation to the prioritisation criteria and the indicators that were applied. Now, this follows on. We do have the A32 letter later on, but this was specifically on the budgetary allocation information that the council had been supplied with. Members on the Rural Affairs Subcommittee will know we do have a report on this matter for Thursday evening's report, which is really giving an assessment on the basis of the, I suppose, looking at the different variables, whether it's population or road density or indeed defects, how our allocation stacks up. But I suppose the key element here, Chair, is really towards the end of the letter, and it's noting that high priority works such as trunk road resurfacing and structural stability, which includes coastal defence repairs, will always take priority and are likely to take the lion's share of the budget.
Okay, thanks, Alison. No comments? I suppose they could bring Seamus in, but I suppose the thing that struck me on that was that the recognition of coastal erosion and repairs that are above and beyond needs prioritization. And the argument that I make all the time over the years was that if you put a road down in some of these other counties, such as County Down or wherever, it stays put. Whereas if you put a road down in Fermanagh, it moves. And just the on-the-ground conditions, roads, and there's a clear example of a road in my own area that moved by 1.5 feet, and the white line can be, and it's a main road, the Waterbridge Road, you can see the white line actually having moved 1.5 feet to the left, and it's left now where the road separates. And that's many years later, they're still filling the divide that's left in the middle of the road because the work that was undertaken to alleviate flooding, and no recourse to those that undertook the work either. Road Service say that they have no ability to follow the engineers that designed that work. So I suppose there is a clear thing there. The coastal erosion work gets a prioritization, and work that allows roads to move in Fermanagh and Omagh doesn't. So be interesting to see what their take on that is. Seamus?
Thanks, Thomas. Yeah, I'd agree with you on that. Just on the fact that these other things will always take priority. Well, Fermanagh again will always be left behind under that criteria because there is no major roads within Fermanagh where the only county has no dual carriageway or motorway. As for the flooding, it's a kind of ironic that they even mention that, because when I think it was a £2 billion flooding budget that was being allocated there a year or so ago, zero amount of that came from Anna's way. Now, maybe it's just because I live in Fermanagh, but to me, Fermanagh probably is the wettest county in Ireland. It's one thing we're not short of is water, and for us to get zero amount of budget for flooding is quite laughable. And again, when sewage and water upgrades was done in the PC21 program, that's for the next 5-6 years. I think it was again, I'm not sure whether, off the top of my head, I'm not sure whether there's a 6 billion budget or a 2 billion budget, but whatever it was anyway, Fermanagh and Omagh got 0.06% of it. So under every criteria that they are setting, we are coming out with nothing. And I think as a council, we really, and I'm glad the Rural Affairs Committee is actually doing studies on this, of just how badly we've been treated. But on every criteria, we're coming out terrible on it. And I'm hoping that as a council, we will be soon in possession of the figures that we're actually able to go up to Stormont or up to the powers that be with a report showing just how badly Stormont or the Assembly or government departments are treating this part of the world.
Okay, thanks, Seamus. And you're noting the correspondence. Okay, have I a seconder for the noting? John? Paul, I'll take it. Your hand might have moved inadvertently, John, there, so we'll not take it. Okay, members, we agreed there. Did Seamus propose to do? That's all. Okay, anything else on 5? 6? 7? 8? 9? 10? All right.
Here, going back to page 7, not being frivolous, this is very serious for people. Yesterday, I was on the Tamlet Road in the town of Omagh, and again, the noise. Very sensible people telling me that the previous night it was unbearable for them on the Tamlet Road. Now, they have their own theories, industrial based, where this might be coming from. So what do they do with that information? Thank you, Chair.
Chair, I think we've previously advised on this matter, and if individuals have complaints, they would be advised to report those to our Environmental Health Department.
Okay. Second time in, Barry?
Yeah, I do think there is a public expectation that environmental health speak publicly on the progress or otherwise of their investigations. This needs to be addressed. That is my take on it. That as a councillor for Omagh, I can't ignore this. I cannot ignore this. I might be encouraged to ignore it, but I can't ignore it.
Chair, no, I don't think anyone's encouraging anyone to ignore a matter, but there are processes to follow. Those processes are underway, and as advised previously, Chair, when those are complete, members will be advised.
John?
Thank you. I was going to page 10. Okay. Obviously, I've been contacted by a number of organisations who were disappointed that the offer of a free portrait of His Majesty the King was turned down by the members who they perceive to have a one state island agenda. And they're wondering, is there any other opportunities that they could avail of to get that free portrait, or is it simply for local government? And I was wondering, is that available through the Cabinet Office? And they would then contact them themselves.
Chair, certainly the correspondence that we received and the council considered was specific to local authorities and had no provision for that to go beyond local authorities. I don't know, and we haven't been advised of any similar scheme that would be in place for community or other organisations.
Okay, moving on to 11.
Sorry, on page 11, Chair, two items of correspondence just in relation to the adopted motion that the council supported from Ards and North Down Borough Council. So just letter of support from Deborah Erskine, MLA, and then also in your other correspondence folder from Orla Begley MP, and that's item 7 in the the other folder, Chair, both in support of the motion.
Okay, thank you. Noeline?
Yes, thank you, Chair. Just to note the correspondence received back from the Financial Services Union on that motion. Just to say thank.
Sorry, Nolan, we're just dealing with these ones first.
Right, sorry.
Yeah. We just need a proposer and seconder to Diana.
I propose to note both letters. Thank you.
Okay, and Paul seconding. Okay, those are the two respective MLAs. And then we're moving on to Noeline. Yeah. Noeline.
Okay, thank you, Chair. Yeah, just as I was saying, just to note the response back from the Financial Services Union, just to note the correspondence and send our thanks for agreeing to meet us.
Okay, we have a date, so.
That's what I was saying, just looking forward to arranging a date.
Yeah, we have the date.
Just to say, Chair, so we have a proposed date that works for the Financial Services Union and appears to, work for members' diary Monday, the 5th of February at 5 p.m. via WebEx. So if you are content, members, we would proceed on that basis.
Okay. I'm not seeing anybody objecting, so we just need Noeline, you're proposing to note the correspondence, a seconder for that, Victor. Thank you. And members were content with the 5th. Okay. Thank you. Okay, anything else on 11? 12? 13? And 14? Okay, that concludes the minutes. Thank you. Okay, we're going to move on to confirm the minutes of the Planning Committee meeting held on the 22nd of November. So for accuracy, page 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16. And Robert?
Happy to propose, Chair.
Thank you. And Earl is second. Okay, thank you. Matters arising then, page 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, and 16. Thank you. Going to point 9 on the agenda, and that is to consider a report of Environmental Services Committee held on the 6th of December. And for accuracy, page 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 8. And Debbie, are you willing to propose? Thank you. And Paul is seconding. Okay, thank you. matters arising, page 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. Seamus?
Thank you. It's just on page 4, item 6.2. Maybe give me a slight wee bit of latitude on this. It's to do with disabled parking bays and just how run down most of our towns and villages are in our council area, as in regard to White Lane and marking mini roundabouts. And that I have been contacted numerous times there in the last, from the winter started, in relation in particular to the right hand turning lane into Bruitborough from the Enniskillen side. The lanes, this is on the A4, even though I think at our DEA meeting we were told that on the A4 they had been renewed, but this one hasn't, and people are really frightened when they're turning in, because there is absolutely no, you can't see the lanes once it gets to night. And then when you go into the village or villages or Listonskee or any of our towns and villages, the lanes are almost non-existent. There's a mini roundabout in Bruitborough. There's no lanes, nobody can see. It's just a free for all. I'm just wondering, can we write to the department and just to the permanent secretary and ask just when is these going to be renewed? Because anytime I travel out of Fermanagh or home area to other villages, especially as you move east, I don't see the same problem whatsoever. So I think there is I remember the road service telling us that the contractors were based in Bangor or somewhere, and that they have to have enough work when they come up to do them for a few days. Well, by God, we could keep them for 6 months if they'd come up. So I can't see that it's a lack of work that's bringing them up. So there must be some other obstacle to bringing them up. And I think we really need to press this before someone's killed on this. And if we are writing, can we just mention the likes of the A4 turning lanes in off it? It's outrageous that the lanes have been let just disappear.
Yeah, and I'm sure we all have examples of where that is the case. So, Victor?
Well, I'll second that proposal. My gripe would be obviously the disabled parking space. They're fairly good in Enniskillen at the minute because they've all been renewed up the town. But in other areas outside of Enniskillen, Listonskee, in other areas, they really are poor, and they've faded quite badly over the last period of time, and they do need to be repainted again.
Okay. We all agreed, members, that we try to get some clarification as to when they can be done. Okay, and there's nothing else on page 5. Okay. Moving on then to Regeneration and Community Committee then on the 12th of December. And for accuracy, first, page 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7. Mark, you happy to propose?
Happy to propose, thank you.
Thank you. And Earl, you're seconding? Thank you. Okay, matters arising. Page 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7. We're going on to Policy and Resources Committee, and that was on the 13th of December. So for accuracy, page 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and 9. And Stephen's not here. Can I have another member to propose? Anne Marie, thank you. And Eddie seconding. Okay. Yeah, that's okay. And matters arising then, page 1, 2, and 3.
Chair, just it's item 4.3, and it's the establishment of the Economic Development and Inward Investment Working Group, and it was agreed that we would confirm nominations at this meeting. So we've been in touch with group leaders. We have some nominations and some are awaited. So the Ulster Unionist Party have nominated Councillor Armstrong. Democratic Unionist Party have nominated Councillor Mahan. The Alliance Party have nominated Councillor Donnelly. Councillor Deehan has indicated her interest and willingness in participating as well, Chair. So just awaiting nominations from the STLP and Sinn Féin, please.
Adam?
Thank you, Chair. Just to sort our nomination, be nominating myself to sit on that group. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Adam. John?
Thank you, Chair. Could I nominate Councillor Seamus Green, Councillor Barry McElduff and Councillor Thomas O'Reilly, yourself?
Okay, thanks, John. Yeah. Okay. If members are content there, can I have somebody to propose and second? Bernard and Josephine, thank you. Okay, anything else on 3? 4? 5? Yeah. Jill?
Yes, thank you, Chair. Just to update, provide an update on the tender paper. So it's item 5.3. It's the last bullet point. So there was clarification sought in relation to why there was no scoring noted in relation to 2 tenders. So just to update, one of the tenders noted had failed to achieve the minimum score and 1 criteria and therefore was excluded. And the second tender did not include a quality submission as part of the tender and was also excluded. And this is in line with our standard procurement procedures.
Okay, thank you, Jill. Okay, can I have a proposer and seconder just to note the update? Mark, thank you. And Glenn, you scratching your head or seconding? Seconding, that'd be good. Okay, anything else on 5? 6? Dermot?
Page 7.
Okay, page 7, we're rolling on to. All yours.
Thanks, Chair. This is just in relation to the letter which was received and presented to us at the PNR committee about the ceasefire in Gaza, the lack of the ceasefire. Just want to once again express my extreme disappointment at the contents of this letter. We are on day 97 now, with over 25,000 innocent people killed in Gaza, and we still do not have a ceasefire. And according to this letter which we've received, the British government have not made any effort to put influence on the Israeli government to call for a ceasefire. I asked at that committee meeting how many more people have to die before we reach that point of getting a ceasefire, and thousands of people have died since that meeting. I just want to congratulate the government of South Africa, who have taken the courageous step of calling for a case against the Israeli government to the International Court of Justice under the Genocide Convention. There's a hearing taking place on Thursday, and that there's a very strong team of human rights lawyers who have compiled an extensive dossier of evidence, and they will present that on Thursday. And I just want to make a proposal, Chair, that we write to the Irish government and ask them to join with South Africa and other countries around the world and join that referral of the Israeli government to the International Court of Justice under the Genocide Convention. Thanks, Chair.
Okay, Thanks, Chairman. John?
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, it was a great piece of work that the South African government have done. They submitted an 84-page submission. I'd recommend anyone who's interested in what's happening over there to take a read of that, just to realise what is happening. And it's great that down in Dublin, all opposition parties have called on the Irish government to support this submission and also join it. And I'd be happy to second Dermot's proposal. I think this council should also join the calls for the Irish government to join that submission.
Okay. And just for clarity, Dermot, are you proposing that or are you just proposing the letter? Both. That's what I want to just clarify. Proposing that you write a letter. Okay, are we all in agreement? No? Okay, we need a vote then. So IT will let us know when we're okay. Vote's open there, members. So. So 2312, is that adds up to 35, does it? Yeah. Okay. You happy enough with 2312? Yeah.
2312, so do you want to call that?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so that vote was 23 in favour and 12 against, so that's passed. Okay. Yeah.
Sorry, I'm just close that.
Yeah. Okay. Moving on to page 8. Alison.
Thank you, Chair. Just item 7.2. So there were a few actions. Members will recall the publication of the independent review into education and specific comment that was made regarding the Strule Shared Education Campus. And because the political talks were ongoing at the time, it was agreed that the council should write to the 5 main political parties. So 2 items of correspondence here, Chair. Firstly, a response from Michelle O'Neill, MLA Vice President of Sinn Féin. And then secondly, a response from the Department of Education confirming the willingness of the department, their SRO, who's the Deputy Secretary, Heather Cousins, and other colleagues, to meet with the council to discuss the shared education project or campus project. And just to advise, Chair, we have a provisional date and time for that meeting, should members be minded to accept. And that would be Tuesday, the 30th of January in Rathgale House in Bangor. Likely to be 11 a.m, but 10:30 or 11 a.m, but we would confirm that. But that's the first slot that we could get.
Okay, thanks, Alison. And all right.
Yeah, thanks very much, Chair and Chief Executive. I propose that we move decisively and take up that opportunity. That's really, really important. 2 items of correspondence then. You have Mark Browns, the Permanent Secretary, and stating that willingness to meet and involving Heather Cousins and Suzanne Kingan, Jennifer Morgan as well. I've been talking to some people who are very concerned. That's why this meeting is timely and urgent, because we need to see diggers on site this year early. We need sign off with contractor. We need to move forward and move decisively with the Strule campus. Now, Michelle O'Neill's letter is very welcome as well, of course, because as incoming First Minister, here we see a commitment to the project, a restated commitment to the project. We believe that the social, economic and educational benefits young people in that area stand to receive through the project should be realised. So this project must not be killed off by the stroke of a civil servant's pen. And so far on site, we have the Arvilley School, wonderful facility, wonderful school. And we also have had the building of the Strathroy Link Road, and that's all about the Stroul campus. So wherever that notion came out of before Christmas, it needs to be dispensed with forthwith, without delay. A civil servant, stroke of a pen to kill off a project. And I have my own suspicions where that might come from, but let's take up this opportunity, this meeting in Bangor without delay. Thank you, Chair.
Okay. And I have other speakers here just to come in, but can we just bear in mind that I'm looking for nominations, obviously for members to go on that, and whether that's the DA of Omagh or whether there is a wider expression of interest. So as we go along, if you want to think about that. Okay, Catherine.
Thank you, Chair. Just to follow on from Barry, we need to see the completion of the Stroul Shared Education Campus. It is a groundbreaking project with regional significance that will allow for state-of-the-art facilities in our community. It will bring social, economic, and most importantly, educational benefits to our young people in the Omagh area and for generations to come. I'm glad to see that the correspondence that the department has agreed to meet with us, and I would be hopeful that I could attend that when the time comes. There has already been substantial delays to this project, and this is growing serious frustration locally. We need to see action. We need an executive formed now to ensure that the completion of the campus is without any more unnecessary delays, and to ensure that our young people can reap the benefits of this project. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, thanks, Catherine. And Earl.
Thank you, Chair. And just first of all, maybe through the Chief Executive, I know we have a meeting penciled in our diaries for, I think it's the 18th for the Stroul Shared Education Campus Community Stakeholder Group meeting at the Education Authority in Omagh. And I know from the last meeting that we were at there, other cousins promised on that date that this was moving forward and there'll be no delays. So it's disappointing to hear what the civil service or the civil servant had come out with on that particular day there before Christmas. So maybe if we can establish if that group's still meeting on that date, first of all, and I'll let our group leader here speak on behalf of the group. Thank you, Chair.
Chair, just in relation to the Stroul Community Stakeholder Group, as Councillor Thompson will be aware, and indeed other members on that group, there have been a few postponements of those dates. Now, what I am mindful of is the 18th of January is scheduled to coincide with the wider Public Sector Day of Action. And certainly civil service trade unions are part of that. So we have received no indication at this point that it is not proceeding, but it may be that the wider strike industrial action on that date they may reschedule the meeting. But irrespective, I suppose that would have a wider attendance and a community attendance. I think the offer of the designated meeting on the 30th would be beneficial.
Okay, Josephine.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Well, I think I definitely welcome the opportunity of meeting with officials from the Department of Education, just to emphasise for them how vital this project is to the Omagh area. And I think members must bear in mind that the state of many of our schools in Omagh, in terms of the state of the physical infrastructure of those schools, is really very poor, and you know, money is being spent to try to bring those schools up to health and safety standards while we wait for the development of the new shared campus. Infrastructure has already been put in place to support the development of this shared campus, and I agree with members who say that this project must go ahead, and I think we do have a responsibility to make our views in that matter extremely clear. And I also welcome the unequivocal support from Mrs. Michelle O'Neill, MLA, in relation to the importance of this project and her continuing support for it. I was just wondering, Chair, were there any other date options offered to us? Tuesday the 30th at 11 o'clock in Bangor is not particularly convenient, and it may preclude some members from attending. Was there any alternative calendar date given? Thank you, Chair.
Sorry, Chair, no, there were no alternative dates proposed other than late January, and there were certain constraints when dates wouldn't be available, and the 30th was suggested as a date that worked best for the departmental team. It was then suggested, Chair, we may be into late February because of some scheduled absences by that team before a meeting could be accommodated. So the 30th seemed to be the one that worked easiest for both our schedule and the department schedule.
Okay. So I'm going for nominations at Paul.
Thank you, Thomas. No, some of these schools are in very bad shape at the minute now, and they're sort of botching them up to keep them going. This should have been going. I thought the school had been up and running by now, but no matter where we are, I propose Councillor Thompson to go to the meeting.
Thanks. John?
Thank you, Chair. I probably propose maybe all the Omagh DEA councillors to go on it, and maybe, if available, the chair or vice chair as well, if they wanted.
Okay. Stephen?
I'm happy enough to second that, Chair.
Okay. Adam?
Thank you, Chair, and just to reiterate what's been said, it's beyond a joke that it's got this far. I remember being on placements in Omagh schools when I was at university, maybe 7, 8 years ago, and they were meant to be in the new site at that stage, and we're still here. But I'd just like to nominate Councillor McGrath to attend the meeting as well. Thank you.
Okay. And Victor?
Thanks, Chair. Well, obviously, we want to see this progressing. It's probably no surprise that it is at the state it's in when we look at some of our schools within Fermanagh over the years, and certainly the delays that was on them. But I would like to propose Councillor Alan Rainey to represent us at that. Thank you.
Okay, members, are we all content with that it's the DEA members from Omagh and Bernard McGrath, Councillor McGrath and Councillor Alan Rainey then as well, and if myself or the Vice Chair are available, that we could go along on that, and that's on January 30th of January at 10:30, or if we're advised different. Okay, are we all agreed there, members? Okay, can I have somebody to propose and note second Paul and Josephine, the correspondence? Thank you. Okay, and we'll get confirmation out as soon as we can then when we get in contact. Okay, so nothing else on 8? 9. Okay. Okay, we're going to move on to delegation of council powers to the following committees. So to Environmental Services Committee to consider a draft response to SONI's draft transmission development plan, consultation and associated strategic environmental assessment, the habitats regulations assessment. Okay, can I have a proposal seconder for that? Marty, thank you. And seconded by Adam, thank you. Okay.
Chair, sorry, one that was inadvertently omitted from the agenda. It's to request council powers for the Policy and Resources Committee to approve a submission of a response to the consultation on the financial context for revenue raising consultations. So this was the subject of a an informal meeting for members before Christmas, and the intention would be that response will be brought to you next week. The closing date for submissions is the 17th of January, hence the request for council powers, please.
Okay, can I have a proposal and seconder? Victor, thank you. And Robert? Okay. Moving on to correspondence.
Thank you, Chair. So, Chair, the first item of correspondence is from the Permanent Secretary of DFI, and this is the major works prioritisation criteria, and specifically the A32. And, well, I think it's certainly implicit within this letter that health and the wider business case was not a consideration. And again, reference is made to the financial pressures. So just to say, Chair, and the Permanent Secretary references in his letter the willingness to meet with the Council on this subject. Again, as noted on the agenda, we do have a proposed date, a date we say once only every 4 years, so the 29th of February at 10:30, from 10:30 to 11:30 in Clarence Court in Belfast, which is DFI headquarters. So again, we would just be seeking nominations, please, if there's a willingness to accept that meeting, and it is really regarding the A32 and the prioritisation criteria.
Okay, thanks, Alison. Josephine?
Yes, thank you, Chair. Yeah, well, I welcome this correspondence from Dr. McMahon, and want to propose to note it, and also propose that we accept this date to meet with him to discuss the prioritisation of the A32. I think that, again, similarly to the shared education campus at Strull, the upgrading of the A32 is a similar project that has been put on the long finger for far too long. And I think it is fitting that we should meet and discuss the reasons why we feel that this scheme should be prioritised. And it's particularly relevant and that the Cornamuck scheme contract documents are currently being prepared. So I think we need to grasp that opportunity. Dr. McMahon has already referenced in his correspondence that you know, it's a waste of money if we have to prepare further contract documents if we defer this project further. So I think there is some hope here, and it's up to us to lobby hard for progress on this scheme. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, thanks, Josephine. And John?
Thank you, Chair. No point in rehashing everything we've said about this over the last number of months, because this is a very important issue. So I'd just like to nominate Councillor Campbell, Councillor McNulty, Councillor Coyle and myself to go on that. And maybe again, if the Chair and Vice Chair is available.
Okay, thanks, John. Are you willing to second the noting? Okay, thank you for that. And Victor?
I would like to nominate Councillor Leanne Armstrong, please.
Okay, thank you, Victor. Glenn, I might have overlooked you there somewhere along the line. Thank you.
Problem, Carly. Well, I support what's been said about the A32, and you know, it's 10 years, I think, in February since the Shinera realignment was officially opened. You know, and that should have been one stage of 3 or 4 upgrades along that route, and it's totally unacceptable, I think, that we're sitting here 10 years later on this route. So I think the meeting is very important, and I know that it'll be of interest across the various parties. And I also note that the correspondence from Dennis McMahon, the Permanent Secretary, was copied to the Permanent Secretary of the Department of Health, because this really is a cross-cutting project that really deserves the full attention of a newly formed executive, just like the A5 and other sort of schemes that go beyond simply, you know, roads infrastructure. This is vital for the people of this district and those accessing the SWA. So fully supported. And just on this very briefly, I did contact DFA Roads before Christmas regarding water ponding on that route, particularly towards sort of the Lack Finger Post and also closer to Omagh. And they have indicated that they will look at outlets along the route to try and alleviate that, because it is a concern, particularly for, maybe inexperienced drivers. The risk of aquaplaning certainly was very evident, particularly during those yellow warnings prior to Christmas along that route. So that is a concern, but there will be interim work done, I believe, in January on that, Chairman. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Glenn. Stephen?
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, just to nominate Councillor Roof and Councillor Deehan as well.
Okay, thank you. And Adam?
Thank you, Chair. And again, to echo the sentiments of other councillors, it's totally unacceptable that we're sitting in this position with only a small part of the schemes for the A32 to be completed. And I do note in the correspondence that DFI is about to undertake the major product, a review of its major projects prioritisation. And whilst this meeting will undoubtedly have a focus on the A32, it would also be a valuable opportunity to raise other schemes with the Permanent Secretary while we have them, a bit of a captive audience, as I'm sure that the councillors who've been nominated will do very well in regards to Enniskillen bypass, A5, and potentially work along the A4 as well in terms of major schemes. And as such, I would like to nominate Councillor McGrath to attend the meeting. Thank you.
Okay. And Paul?
I'd nominate Councillor Thompson.
Okay, thanks, Paul. Can I maybe just get you to give a wee read back on all of those that we have nominated so people are clear?
Okay, Chair, so we would have, subject to your availability, Chair, yourself or the Vice Chair, Councillors Deehan, Campbell, McNulty, Coyle, John Feely, Armstrong, Roof, McGrath and Thompson.
Okay, we all agreed, members? Okay, thank you. And it's been proposed and seconded for the noting of the correspondence. So, okay, our next piece of
Thanks, Chair. The next item of correspondence is really for noting, but it's a motion that was adopted by Newry Mourne Down District Council, and it's regarding cystic fibrosis medication. And really, the letter is commending the motion to the council, but specifically that we would support the request really regarding the withdrawal or changes around the medications referenced, and specifically NICE's decision to remove the NHS recommendations for a variety of named drugs due to rising costs.
Thanks, Alison. John?
Thank you. I would like to note and also to commend the council for bringing forth that motion. This is this drug can change people's lives, and they're actually saying if there's one child in a family and another child is born, that child will, and it has the same condition, it will not have access to that drug, but the other child will. So it's unbelievable that somebody could even think that that would be something sensible to do. So I recommend that we support this motion.
You proposing that, John? Yeah. Okay, thanks. And Debbie?
Yeah, and it's a terrible thing to withdraw this drug when it's helping so many people. So I'd like to second, please.
Okay, and are you willing to second the noting as well?
Yes, I'll second the
Okay.
note as well. Thank you.
Members, are we all in agreement? Okay, thank you very much. Moving on.
Okay, thank you, Chair. The next letter is from the Department for Levelling Up Housing and Communities, and this is regarding defending democracy and cyber security and the potential threats around electoral and democratic processes, and really just towards the conclusion of the letter. So a lot of it's really just for information and the various steps that are in place, but the task force would welcome the Council's views on what action government can take to support democracy against interference at all levels. So you may or may not have views on that, Chair, otherwise we could just note it.
Seamus, you have a view?
Yeah, maybe we should write to them and tell them maybe that for the good of democracy, government shouldn't be elected with 40 or 42% of the vote. Maybe that'd be the first step they should take to sort out democracy.
Thank you. And Diana?
To note, thank you.
You're proposing to note, thank you. And have a seconder, John, you're willing to second the noting. Thank you, members. Okay, moving along.
Thank you, Chair. We then have two items of correspondence from the Department for Communities. They're both obviously on different matters, Chair, so maybe we just take separate proposers and seconders, please. The first for information is regarding the Module 6 launch of the COVID-19 public inquiry. And as previously, any inputs provided by local government were undertaken by NILGA in previous modules, and should an input be required for this module, Chair, a similar arrangement would apply. So just deal with
Okay,
that one
have
first.
a proposer, a seconder? Josephine, thank you. And John? Okay, all agreed? Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. And then the second item is details regarding the appointment of Vice Chair and members to the Board of Sport Northern Ireland. And this is really if we've any comments on the competition itself or the advertisement, and members will have seen the deadline for responses is tomorrow. Hence why we're bringing the letter to members this evening, but may just be sufficient again for noting, please, Chair.
Okay, Victor is proposing to note and Earl seconding that. Are we all agreed?
Thank you, Chair. And just to confirm then, all other correspondence was dealt with in the course of matters arising. So that concludes the correspondence, Chair.
Okay, thank you. Okay, we're going to move on now to first of our two motions. And our first motion is being proposed by Adam and seconded by Gavin. So, Adam, you have 5 minutes.
Thank you, Chair, and hopefully I won't take the full 5 minutes. But I know you all will feel like myself when I say this, is that a person's chances in life should not be dictated by the postcode where you're born, and that every person should have the equal opportunity to succeed and go as far as their talents will take them, including here in this district. But as you will all be aware as well, far too often that is still not the case in 2024. And as we speak, far too many people are trapped in poverty, deprivation and disadvantage in our communities. Far too many workers can't get jobs that pay the bills, and families end up trapped in cycles of poverty for generations. And of course, while some have done very well since our peace agreement 25 years ago, other places have been left behind. And this isn't something that we can stand over any longer. And it is something that everyone on this council has been very vocal about for many years. This is one of the reasons why the SDLP and Sinead McLaughlin MLA are bringing forward a private members bill to change the way Stormont works, so that every area that has been left behind gets their fair share of investment and jobs. And of course, I have to acknowledge that Stormont isn't working right now due to one particular party, but fortunately the work on this private members bill is being done now, so it can be tabled ASAP if and when Stormont returns. And we've seen in the last mandate that despite time out, we were still able to get many private members bills through that benefited people here. The proposed legislation being brought forward will help combat the issues as I've raised and ensure our government is taking all necessary steps to spread jobs and investment throughout the north so everyone has the chance to succeed. This proposed law is designed to change the way Stormont works, and this will be achieved by placing binding targets on all government departments to ensure that regional economic balance is fully considered when plans, strategies and initiatives are put together. And importantly for us, it will also mandate Invest NI to develop and publish sub-regional targets, and it will help us all in holding the Economic Development Agency accountable. And a few months ago, we had a fairly, it might have been just a month ago or so, we had a fairly positive all-party meeting with Invest NI, and whilst this was a good development, I do believe that legislative targets are required to ensure fair and equitable investment across the north and for this district. Many of you here and myself have talked about Invest NI previously, and I may be repeating comments that have been made by many others in this chamber over the past number of years, but the truth is that Invest NI has failed to do its job in spreading jobs and opportunity throughout the north equitably. Anything that changes their approach is worth doing, in my view, as this legislation would. And we're all very used to, when we're talking about economic disparity, and unfair investment, to Derry and Belfast dominating the conversation, the disparity between the two. But the truth is, areas like Fermanagh and Omagh deserve to have our voice heard as well and to be treated equally. Regional balance isn't just about the two largest cities, it's about each and every one of our communities getting its fair share of jobs and investment. That includes people here, and we must be fully represented in this process. That's why I'm proposing that our council responds to the consultation on this legislation and ensures that we come together to stand up for this place, as we have done many times previously on this particular issue. I believe that if we make a strong case for this area with mandated targets written into law, we can ensure that Stormont finally starts delivering in the way that we know it can, and I would urge everyone to support this motion. Thank you.
Okay. Thanks, Adam. And Gavin?
Thank you very much, Chair, and I'll be brief as Councillor Garen has really covered all the main points of the motion there. But I'm more than happy to second this motion, as in truth this is dealing with our people and their livelihoods, and each and every one of our constituents being able to and having the opportunity to succeed and reach their full potential. The place that you call home should not be a factor in being deprived of an opportunity or being discriminated against in economic development or investment. And over a great number of years, that is what has been happening, a complete act of discrimination against Fermanagh and Omagh. As the motion states, Invest NI helped to create 34 jobs in Fermanagh and Omagh area in 2022-2023. This is not only worrying, but a complete disgrace. The lowest number of job creation out of the whole 11 council areas. There have been many statements and discussions about Invest NI in this chamber since I became a councillor 7 years ago. And from what I can recall, there hasn't been much positivity surrounding Invest NI. Enough is enough, really. Fermanagh and Omagh has been ignored for far too long, and we deserve to have our voices heard just as much as everyone else. Far too many of our people are living in poverty and can't get employment that not alone pays the bills, but allows them to live to the very basic of standards. People from this region are being deprived of opportunities because of the historic lack of investment and employment. When it comes to the north, all we seem to hear about is Belfast and Derry, and the buck seems to stop there. That must change. I should think that we will have full support in this motion as it affects us all. I am happy to second the motion. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, thanks, Gavin. John?
Thank you, Chair, and thank the SDLP for bringing this motion. Sinn Féin will be voting in favour of it. And hopefully we might get somewhere with Invest NI, because like this term on the council and my previous term, I've even had meetings with Invest NI, and there's always been kind of positive way they speak, but they deliver nothing. It's if our post service in Fermanagh and Omagh delivered the way Invest NI would be chasing the postman out of the county. So hopefully there might be some movement, but when you do talk about industry and Invest NI and stuff, they deliver nothing. But for all the businesses out there that are carrying on regardless and in spite of Invest NI, I'd like to give a call out to them, small engineering firms, tourism firms. You know, they are creating jobs without the help, you know, and this council area, if they had a bit more support from Invest NI, we could do so much better. So hopefully it gets somewhere, and once again, we'll be supporting.
Okay, thank you, John. Stephen?
Thank you, Chair, and a big tribute to the SDLP for bringing this motion forward. I think that it's always useful for us to be able to have this conversation with respect to economic performance to date, and indeed the track record of Invest NI to date, and the action plan that has been brought forward. A lot of it relates to institutional reform and reconfiguration of the organisation, but there are some practical elements that have a direct impact in terms of the wider sub-regional piece. In particular, I'm just looking at the action plan here. By September 2024, there should be the publication of a sub-regional economic plan for Northern Ireland, which includes sub-regional targets, and alongside that, the Invest NI sub-regional network will be enhanced to support the delivery of Northern Ireland's sub-regional economic plan and associated performance targets. And from that perspective, I think that there needs to be quite obviously that engagement from our own side and making sure that we inform those plans and those targets going forward, making sure that the aspirations and the needs of this district and our constituents are very much to the fore, just given the appalling track record of Invest NI in the past in the Department for the Economy, because ultimately the status quo is not going to be acceptable in terms of people's expectations and demand for a better quality of living, more opportunities, and making sure that young people have the opportunities required to be able to allow them to stay here and make their contribution. And the one other thing that is mentioned under the piece with respect to sub-regional and place within the action plan is that Invest NI will publish an industrial land and building strategy that will deliver solutions which support our local businesses to grow and expand. And that is something that is enormously welcome, and it builds upon representations that have been made very strongly from this council in terms of the need for that, particularly in terms of the needs within the Omagh area. But the other thing that I think needs to strongly be stressed in terms of further progress, in terms of legislation, indeed in terms of this action plan, is dealing with the very glaring gap which has been in terms of that precise piece around investor visits to particular areas, because that does have a direct knock-on impact in terms of the level of investment and job creation that actually happens within our district. And even the disparity in population numbers cannot explain the gap that is quite clear between, for example, South Belfast and West Tyrone. So that is something that very clearly needs to be dealt with. And indeed, in terms of the further element of the motion dealing with consultation of potential legislation that could be coming through in the context of a re-established Stormont, I fully support us engaging with that positively to make sure that the views and the needs of this district are represented. So Alliance will be supporting the motion, Chair.
Okay, thanks, Stephen. Josephine?
Chair, and just to commend Councillor Gannon and Councillor McPhillips on bringing forward this very important motion. It is very timely, Chair. We have discussed in this chamber before regional economic imbalances and the way in which our council area has been significantly disadvantaged in terms of economic development. That situation must change. I certainly do welcome the publication of the action plan by Invest NI, and more importantly, the proposal for legislation which is designed to address these regional economic imbalances through a regional jobs and investment bill. And I think that as a council, we will be responding to that consultation to attempt to get that legislation in place, hopefully with a renewed executive and assembly as soon as possible. So I'll be supporting this motion, Chair. Thank you.
Okay. Josephine? Diana?
Thank you, Chair. Yes, and this motion, the UP will be supporting. It has some similarity to a motion brought in October, again with an investment theme. And following that, a working group has met with Invest NI, and I think we took away some reassurance there that they will correspond with us or meet with us more regularly, and I think our points were put well across. I think it's essential that the skills, the upskilling and the skills improvement of our employees or of the workforce, that those are paramount within our district, because high paid, high value jobs will only come through a skilled sector, a skilled workforce. Happy to, as I said, to recommend or to support the proposal and the work that goes with it. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, thanks, Diana. Earl?
Thanks very much, Chair. Thank the SDLP for bringing forward the motion. On behalf of the Democratic Unionist Party, we will be supporting the motion. However, we just don't agree with some of the language used there in the commentary used by the proposer and the seconder. However, as a party, we will support the motion. I suppose it goes without saying with regard to Invest NI locally, do a good job. I've worked with them as a councillor over many years, but it's, I suppose, it's at headquarter level that there's an issue, and we're happy as a party to support the motion. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, thanks, Earl. I have no other speakers, so Adam? you wish to round up?
Just to thank everyone for their support on this motion. Thank you, Chair.
Okay. Can I take it that we're all in favour of the motion? Agreed? Okay, thank you, members. We're moving on to our second motion on housing need that's proposed by Barry and seconded by Seamus. Barry, you have 5 minutes.
Okay, thank you. Mullum and Runshaw, I want to propose this motion. It's about Chehiak, it's about housing. And first point I want to make is that there are growing levels of housing stress in our local communities. And as councillors, many of us, I'm sure, are witness to this every single week. People who are on a waiting list, who are constantly wanting reassurance from the housing executive that something is going to come on stream for them to meet their needs. They're checking up on how many points they have. They've been awarded points for homelessness, perhaps. They have maybe it's taken a toll on their health, their physical health or their mental health. This involves people who are inadequately housed, sometimes paying costs which are really high relative to their income. It could be somebody that is currently living in a damp house. It's very often linked to poverty. And at this point, I was thinking about this. The late Pat Darcy from Taddyray, Professor Pat Darcy, I remember talking to him about the Maslow hierarchy of needs, and some needs take priority over others in a person's life. The lower level basic needs like food, water, a home, safety, these are described as physiological needs, leading up to the highest level of need, self-actualization. So I just want to remember that Pat Darcy and I had a conversation about that in his time. So before people can move up the hierarchy to pursue more needs like achieve ambitions, they need to have their house in order. And every week I get phone calls, voicemails, WhatsApp messages, texts from local people who need to see a dramatic change in their housing situation. It could be young parents with children. It could be a single young person. It can be older people with mobility issues, seeking ground floor accommodation. You know, the needs are, and I've been speaking to private landlords, one of whom would have a big property portfolio. And he told me, he said, I have nothing at this time. He says, there's nothing moving. I have nothing at this time. And that surprised me, shocked me, that there's that lack of movement. And very often people are being offered temporary accommodation. A local person, for example, could be offered hostel accommodation in Ballymena or Coleraine. It doesn't make sense to the way that they live, their culture, their way of living. You know, that shocks them that that's the only offer on the table. And I want to acknowledge, you know, that housing associations are building some units at this time. That's positive. You know, in each of our DEAs, I'm sure there's some level of housing association activity. I'm very aware of Apex and Radius and Choice and Arbor and other housing associations that are doing things variously at this time, like the Arbor Housing Association has 40 units coming on stream shortly at Woodside Avenue in Omagh, and Choice have another scheme on the Kevlin Road, Coolnagard area. So I would say to local people, it's really, really important to engage with the housing executive to determine where you are on the waiting list and to put yourself onto their radar. Recently, in the last couple of years, Minister Deirdre Hargey would have moved on giving the housing executive the ability to borrow. And the housing executive has the capacity, but has it the will? Right now in North Belfast, after a gap of about 25 to 30 years, 6 housing executive houses are being built at Sunningdale Gardens. And really my message is it's time for the housing executive to build houses again in this council area. That is my message. And Granulong is excited at what's happening in North Belfast. Well, let them become excited as well about what's happening in Omagh and Enniskillen and in the other 5 rural DEAs. What way am I for time there, Chair?
About out.
So I'll come in on the latter part, later on. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. And Seamus?
Thank you, Chair, and I would like to second this motion. Housing is a fundamental right and should be seen as a fundamental right for everyone in our community, everyone on this island. And as it stands, it doesn't seem to be a fundamental right. There are more homeless people now, I think, than there has been in the last 40 years. There is a great demand for housing, but as Barry said there, the housing executive is now just the housing executive is now just starting to build houses again after 30, 40 years. It's quite shocking. The other thing, the housing stock has got into a bad state. I think it was recently I seen a case, it wasn't on this island, but of a wee child that was sent home from hospital to a substandard house full of mould and all sorts, and the child died. God forbid that happens in our council area, but unless something's done, it is a possibility. Houses need to be upgraded, but they also need new homes built because there is a big demand for it. We have an ageing population, and there is demand all around for housing. The one thing that I believe needs to be done as well, which could help, is the latent demand test needs to be relooked at. In my own community, Coonan, we have had a number of latent demand tests. We have filled our community hall with people, showing that there is a demand. But then when the results come back from housing executive, they say there's no demand. Now, my argument has always been, if somebody is living in Enniskillen or Omagh or Lisnaskea or Irvinstown and they want to move back to Coonan or Bruitborough, well, there's a demand in Coonan or Bruitborough, and then it frees up a house in Enniskillen, Omagh, Lisnaskea, Irvinstown. So, but that isn't taken into account on the latent demand test. So I believe it's essential that's relooked at. So I'll just leave it at that, and I'm more than happy to second this proposal.
Okay.
Or this motion.
Thanks, Seamus. Victor?
Thank you, Chair. Well, whilst we support this motion and the actions detailed, let us not overlook a critical factor. Which party held the Housing Ministry most recently? The proposers of this motion belong to the same party that previously led the Housing Ministry. Their call for revised definition and assessment of latent housing demand begs the question, why was this not progressed when they had the power to do so? The undeniable truth is that Northern Ireland faces a housing crisis of significant proportions. Without proactive intervention, the crisis will only worsen. Resolving the crisis demands a multifaceted approach, including an increase in available housing options. Crucially, we must ramp up the construction of houses units annually, a task hindered this year by a reduced capital budget. While plans to revitalise the Housing Executive were announced in November 2020, the lack of substantial progress as we step into 2024 is deeply disappointing. To effectively tackle this crisis, we need a clear plan that recognises social housing as an essential public services. However, we must also be candid with the people who have now let us down. Meaningful change will take time, but while intervention requires time, every party in this chamber must commit to redoubling their efforts to ensure proactive action is delivered. As already highlighted, the crux of resolving the housing crisis lies in building more homes. With over 45,000 people on the housing waiting list across Northern Ireland, it is evident that the current rate of social housing construction falls short, and setting a goal of constructing 5,000 homes annually is necessary. But achieving this ambition target demands cross-departmental commitment. As I said at the start, we will be supporting this motion. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, thanks, Victor. Debbie?
Thanks, Chair. Yeah, this is one of the biggest issues that comes to me as a councillor and through our constituency office. With changes in the benefit system and with the discretionary payment being reduced or stopped for so many in the private rental sector, they are now in panic status as they struggle or just cannot pay the difference in their rent, and they are at high risk of homelessness now. And today I was with a constituent who is in this very position. She doesn't know how long she's going to have a roof over her head. Over Christmas, I spoke to 2 others that are in exactly the same position. So I fully support this motion. We must have more social housing built in our council area for these people the homelessness is going to go up because people just cannot afford the private sector as it is at the minute. So fully support the motion.
Okay, thanks, Debbie. Josephine?
Thank you, Chair. Well, I want to commend Councillor McElduff and Councillor Green for bringing forward this motion, which I wholeheartedly support. We had a very informative meeting with Grania Long and her team from the Northern Ireland Housing Executive, and I think we all welcomed the ability of the Housing Executive now to actually engage in the construction of housing. Councillor McElduff is quite correct. Adequate shelter is part of the Maslow's hierarchy of need. We all need to have comfortable, safe and affordable housing in which we can live and rear our families, and suitable provision for the elderly and vulnerable within our society. Clearly, in Northern Ireland, that is not the situation. We all are familiar with cases of families who perhaps are facing eviction from their properties. For example, the landlord might want to sell his property and they've been given leave, served notice to vacate. This causes an enormous amount of stress and anxiety for families who really don't know from month to month if they're going to have a roof over their heads. Fact of the matter is that every family, every individual should have housing security. And with changes to welfare benefits and so on, people are simply not able to afford a good standard of housing. There's also the issue of affordable housing. There are people who want to own their own homes, but the prices are just too high. There are initiatives that can address this, like co-ownership, and these are schemes which have proved very successful in the past, and I would like to see them being enhanced. So this is a good motion. It's one that definitely makes sense, will be of great benefit for our constituents, and one that I support, Chair. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Josephine. Adam?
Thank you, Chair, and thank you to Councillors McElduff and Green for bringing this motion this evening. I think having the figures gives a lot of context. That the last time figures were released was in September of last year, September 23. And in those figures in Fermanagh and Omagh, 2,072 people were on the housing waiting list, 1,434 of which were in housing stress. And both these figures increased from the previous year. And this is a general trend over the years. And as has been said by other speakers, and I'd like to note it, is that the Housing Executive has not completed any new dwellings since 2002 that they've built themselves. Obviously, it's welcome news about 6 new in North Belfast, and they're starting, but it's a drop in the ocean. And given that the Housing Executive stopped producing new homes in 2002, it is very clear why there's a problem and why we do have a social housing crisis. You know, for over 2 decades, housing has been in the hands of essentially of the private sector. And it is clear that the current model has failed. And on average, over the last 3 years, approximately 800 new homes were completed that became Housing Executive tenancies. But at the same time, and that was across the whole of the North, and across the same time frame, the number of people in housing stress and on waiting lists has increased year on year during those 3 years. And across the North, it currently sits at 33,587 and 45,615 respectively. Meaning at the current building rate, it would take 57 years to clear the current waiting list with no new applicants. But again, using the past 3 years figures, there's approximately 1,300 or 1,300 new applicants every year. The figures are only going to increase as interest rates have increased for mortgages, as rents skyrocket across the district, making housing unattainable for so many people. And nothing other than a substantial public state-led house building project in the tens of thousands will solve this. And of course, we will be supporting this motion. Thank you, Chair.
Okay. Thanks, Adam. Mark?
Thank you, Chair. And very briefly, just to say that the DUP will be supporting this motion as well, a very important one. The price of houses has rose sharply over this last period. And indeed, for someone starting out to try and buy a house, is very pricey. It's important that houses are available for those who need them by the Housing Executive. And as we've heard, there's been no new developments in this last number of years. So it is good that we're calling on the Northern Ireland Housing Executive. And we hope to hear positive news in the future of what they can do. So thank you, Chair.
Okay. Thanks, Mark. Eddie?
Thanks, Chair, and I welcome the proposal. Alliance will be supporting it. It kind of goes in the context of the demographics of the country, and the recent census showed the ever increasing number of people living on their own in Northern Ireland, and with the number of people also living longer, that has put further and further pressure on the housing market, particularly on the Housing Executive. In the local area, we have had some local constituents attempted to build some Housing Executive premises, and they have been told that the demand has been met for those. I think that's clear by the statistics that that's incorrect, and I know that certain local residents are having to stay in hotels, for example, because there just simply isn't the number of accommodations available for them. So our party will be supporting it, and we look to see some changes in the future.
Okay, thanks, Eddie. No other speakers indicating, so Barry, you.
Thank you, Chair. Couple of additional points I wanted to make before acknowledging other speakers is that I want to welcome the engagement that is now taking place, facilitated by our council officers with the Housing Executive on social housing need. That's something we called for in the last mandate, and it's good that it's happening. I understand from speaking to Councillor Maguire that the Enniskillen version of that took place yesterday evening, I think. And I know that the Omagh Town one is on Monday, the 5th of February. So looking forward to that engagement. That's important. You know, we can maybe give some advice about the availability of sites, etc. I want to thank all the speakers who contributed. Glad that Councillor Green covered the latent housing demand issue and the call for a redefinition of that. I too have had the experience of being in a community hall with 55 people asserting the needs of their community, and the result coming back from the housing executive that there wasn't a demand in that area. It was like really, really hard to comprehend. So we do need a comprehensive rollout, but I thank the other councillors and parties who contributed to this discussion. Some good, strong points were made by each individual, and I think I'll leave it at that. Just wanted to remember Pat Darcy telling me in my youth that about the Maslow housing need thing, and I thought it was pertinent to raise that in the context of this motion. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, thanks for that, Barry. And can I take it that we're all in agreement, members? Okay, thank you very much. That concludes our two motions. We are moving on to confidential, ALB. And I have two people with ALB. Josephine, stick on your light there for me, Josephine. There we are.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you for giving me the opportunity to raise this matter under AOB. Chair and members, I have had correspondence from Mr. Terry Haley, who is the chairman of Omagh Gardening Society, and he informs me that the World Daffodil Convention will be taking place in Northern Ireland in April of this year. And the convention will start off in Lisburn and Hillsborough and then make their way to Omagh and then back to Belfast. So they are being hosted by the Northern Ireland Daffodil Group. And when they're in Omagh, the convention will be hosted primarily by Omagh Gardening Society. Omagh Gardening Society are very successful in the area. And in particular, they have in their membership Mr. Brian Duncan, who is a daffodil breeder of international repute, and he will address the convention at the Omagh Gardening Society monthly meeting on the 23rd of April. Also, when the convention visits our council area, they will also have the opportunity of visiting Esker Daffodil Farm in Dromore, who will host them and provide refreshments and demonstrate with great pride the wonderful daffodils that are being grown in Esker Farm in Dromore. So they will have their formal dinner in the Silver Birch Hotel on the 24th of April. You will also have the opportunity of visiting the Ulster American Folk Park. This is a big delegation. Between 80 and 100 people are expected. And it is a great opportunity to show off not only our local gardening industry, but also our local sites. And hopefully many of these international visitors will spread the word about the wonderful tourist product we have in our council area. So my request, Chair, with your guidance, is if you or the Vice Chair were available to give a welcoming address to the World Daffodil Convention at their formal dinner on the 24th of April, if possible, Chair. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Josephine, for raising that. It sounds very promising that we will have a lot of international visitors getting the opportunity to sample a little of the delights of our council area. And I'd certainly look forward to meeting up with them, given that we get some correspondence to that effect. So thank you for raising that, Josephine. And Seamus? He didn't. Seamus.
Thank you, Chair. I just wanted to bring up the energy payment scheme that ended last, I think it was last May, was the last time you could claim for it. I believe we as a council wrote to the relevant minister in England because there was a certain amount of people that, even though they tried their best, had rang Energia, Electric Ireland, NI Electricity or whatever, they still didn't get paid, and nor have they got any word back. It just seemed that there was a line through onto the scheme. I don't believe we ever got any reply back, as far as I know. At least I don't remember seeing anything. So I'm just thinking we should write again. We shouldn't just abandon people that didn't get it, because they were equally as needing it as anyone else, and to just abandon them just because some electricity company or that didn't administer it properly isn't right. So I propose we write again to that relevant minister, and maybe even to the Prime Minister's office, to see what actually has happened, because if the minister isn't gonna reply to this, perhaps maybe we should go to the organ grinder.
Okay, thanks, Seamus. And Adam, unless you're just seconding, that's the only thing I'm taking. So if it's anything else, do indicate to me. We didn't. No.
Sure, we did get something. Basically, it was kind of, we've extended already, and good luck to you, but happy to second was what I was going to say.
Okay. Thank you. Okay, we all agreed there, members? Yep. Okay, thank you. Moving to confidential now at this point. So IT will give us proposed by Earl, thank you, and seconded by Paul, thank you. All, thank you. IT will give us a little indication when we're out. Okay, and I ask our Chief Executive to give us a little resume of what happened.
Thank you, Chair. While in confidential business, the Council confirmed and signed the confidential minutes of the special Council meeting held on the 27th of November 2023 and also the Council meeting, minutes of the Council meeting held on the 5th of December 2023. And they received a general update in terms of matters arising in relation to two legal matters. Also confirmed the confidential matters of the Planning Committee held on the 22nd of November, the Environmental Services Committee held on the 6th of December, the Regeneration and Community Committee held on the 12th of December, and the Policy and Resources Committee meeting held on the 13th of December. And there were no matters arising from those respective committees, Chair.
Okay, proposer and seconder, Josephine and Shirley, thank you. All agreed? Okay, members, that concludes the meeting. Thank you all very much and safe home.